There is a detail hidden deep within ancient biblical texts that most people overlook their entire lives. Yet, once you see it, it changes everything you thought you knew about the spiritual realm. In millions of churches, books, and Hollywood movies around the world, these three words are thrown around as if they mean the exact same thing: demon, devil, and fallen angel. But they do not. Lucifer was not a demon. The dark entities that Jesus cast out of the possessed were not fallen angels. And if you read the oldest manuscripts looking for the word devil in the early chapters of the Old Testament, you are in for a startling surprise. It simply is not there in the way you think. And yet, we use these words interchangeably every single day, blending them into one massive, terrifying shadow. Why? This is the first thing you need to grasp, because it will forever change the way you read the Bible and understand the invisible war happening around you. These three words did not come into the world at the same time. They are three completely distinct identities, born at three pivotal, catastrophic moments in cosmic history. And each of these three words carries a powerful, chilling story within it. Most Bible readers and even scholars use them their whole lives without ever knowing what they actually are, or more importantly, what they actually want from you. So pay close attention, because we are about to clear up a massive, ancient misunderstanding. You will see why the scriptures and ancient texts use these specific names at precise moments and for very precise reasons. To make sure you do not get lost in the dark along the way, I want you to hold on to this image. These three words are like three layers of a deep abyss. Each layer is darker and more ancient than the last. Each one is built upon a different kind of rebellion. And only when you peer into all three layers do you understand the true nature of the darkness we face. We will start with the first layer, the oldest of the three cosmic tragedies, the fallen angels. If you could travel back to the dawn of time, long before humanity took its first breath, you'd discover something startling. Being a fallen angel didn't just mean being a bad spirit. In the original ancient Hebrew and Greek texts, angels were called malach or angelos, literally meaning messengers or watchers. They were not wandering ghosts. They were the royal court of the heavens. They were majestic, terrifying beings of light, given specific jurisdictions over the cosmos. They had immense power, authority, and most importantly, free will. And the first time we see the true origin of their fall is not just in Genesis, but expanded upon in the ancient, mysterious Book of Enoch. They didn't just fall by accident. They crossed a boundary that was never meant to be crossed. In Genesis chapter 6, the Bible gives us a terrifying, fragmented glimpse into a rebellion that forever altered human history. It speaks of the sons of God who looked down and saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took them as wives. But the ancient Book of Enoch, a text deeply revered by the early church and quoted directly in the New Testament by the Apostle Jude, pulls back the curtain completely. It gives these beings a name: the Watchers. Imagine an elite echelon of celestial beings assigned by the Creator to simply observe and guide early humanity. But observation turned into obsession, and guardianship twisted into lust. Led by an entity named Samyaza, 200 of these powerful, majestic beings descended upon the peak of Mount Hermon. They didn't just walk among us, they violently interrupted the course of human history. They traded divine secrets for human flesh. Ancient texts reveal that these watchers taught mankind the forbidden arts. They taught men how to forge swords, shields, and breastplates, birthing the concept of mechanized warfare. They introduced humanity to sorcery, root cuttings, and the intoxicating, deceptive power of cosmetics and seduction. They weaponized the human race, and then came the ultimate transgression. From the unnatural, forbidden union between these celestial beings and human women, a hybrid race was born. The Bible calls them the Nephilim, giants of immense, terrifying power and insatiable violence. They were not human, and they were not angels. They were abominations that began to devour the resources of the earth, eventually turning on humanity itself. The world was plunged into a state of absolute, irreversible corruption and bloodshed. This was not a minor mistake. It was cosmic treason of the highest order. The Creator's response was swift, absolute, and devastating. The great flood of Noah's time was unleashed not just to wash away human sin, but to eradicate this corrupted hybrid bloodline that threatened to destroy God's creation. But what happened to those specific fallen angels? Here is where the distinction becomes crucial, and where modern pop culture and movies get it completely wrong. They did not become the demons possessing people in the streets of Galilee. According to the Apostle Peter and the Book of Jude, these specific angels who left their proper dwelling were judged immediately. God cast them down into Tartarus, the deepest, darkest subterranean abyss. They are bound there in eternal, unbreakable chains, locked away in absolute darkness until the great day of judgment. They are not the entities hiding in the shadows of your room at night. The watchers are prisoners of a primordial war. Now, it is true that not all rebellious angels were locked in the abyss. A third of the stars of heaven fell, and many retained their cosmic authority. They became the high-ranking principalities and powers that the Apostle Paul so desperately warns us about in Ephesians. They are the unseen warlords of the air, manipulating nations, orchestrating wars, and influencing world leaders from the upper dimensions. They do not possess a single human. They possess systems, empires, and ideologies. But this brings us to a terrifying question. If the fallen angels are either bound in chains in the darkest abyss or operating as untouchable cosmic warlords in the heavenly places, then what exactly were the filthy, crawling, tormented spirits that Jesus constantly cast out of suffering people? What are the unseen entities that desperately seek to inhabit human bodies, causing sickness, madness, and destruction today? To answer that, we must descend to the second layer of our staircase. We must uncover the horrifying, largely forgotten origin of the demons. To understand what a demon truly is, we have to look at the rotting, muddy aftermath of the great flood. As the waters of Noah's flood rose, they achieved their primary, terrifying purpose: the physical extermination of the Nephilim. The colossal, violent bodies of these hybrid giants were crushed and drowned beneath the weight of the oceans. The earth was cleansed of their flesh. But here is the chilling ancient secret that the Book of Enoch reveals, and that first-century readers of the Bible implicitly understood. Water can destroy a physical body, but it cannot destroy a spirit born of celestial fire. Because the Nephilim were not entirely human, their souls could not descend into Sheol, the resting place of the human dead. But because they were born of unauthorized, forbidden flesh, their spirits were utterly barred from ascending into the heavens. So, what happened to them? Where did they go? The ancient texts declare a terrifying curse upon them. God decreed that the disembodied spirits of these dead giants would be condemned to roam the physical earth. Enoch chapter 15 lays it out with bone-chilling clarity. The spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offenses. These cursed, wandering spirits are what the ancient world and the New Testament call demons. Once you understand this single, hidden truth, every demonic encounter in the Bible suddenly makes horrifying sense. Why do demons in the Gospels act so wildly different from the majestic, calculating fallen angels? Fallen angels operate from the upper atmosphere. They seek to control empires, manipulate kings, and receive worship as false gods. They do not want your body. They want your allegiance. Demons, on the other hand, are the desperate earth-bound ghosts of dead giants. They once possessed physical bodies of immense power, and now they are reduced to invisible, agonizing starvation. They are obsessed with the physical realm. They crave the sensation of touching, tasting, and feeling, but they have no nervous system of their own to experience it. This is exactly why they are relentlessly driven to possess biological vessels. Think about the famous story in the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus confronts the man possessed by a legion of demons. When the demons realize they are about to be cast out of the man, they beg Jesus not to send them into the abyss. They are utterly terrified of being without a body. What do they ask for instead? Send us into the pigs. Let us enter them. They would rather inhabit the filthy bodies of animals than face the agonizing void of being disembodied. Jesus grants it, and the sheer, chaotic violence of these ancient spirits drives the entire herd to madness, plunging them off a cliff to their deaths. Demons bring chaos, sickness, self-harm, and absolute degradation to the bodies they inhabit because they are fundamentally spirits of corruption. So, if the fallen angels are the imprisoned watchers or the unseen cosmic warlords, and if demons are the desperate, disembodied spirits of the dead Nephilim crawling upon the earth, then who is the master of it all? We have climbed down the first two layers of the abyss. Now, we must face the bottom layer. We must face the third word, a word that has been twisted, caricatured, and misunderstood more than any other in human history: the devil. Who is he really? Is he a fallen angel? Is he a demon? The ancient texts reveal an identity so complex, so terrifying, and so close to the throne of God that it will shatter everything you've been taught in Sunday school. We have reached the absolute bottom of the abyss, the third and final layer of our cosmic descent. We are now standing before a word that has been twisted into cartoons, horror movie cliches, and cheap Halloween costumes: the devil. Who is he really? If you picture a red creature with horns and a pitchfork ruling over a fiery underworld, you are buying into medieval poetry, not ancient scripture. The truth found in the oldest biblical texts is infinitely more terrifying, precisely because it is so incredibly beautiful. The entity we call the devil, identified in ancient prophecies as Lucifer, the day star, or son of the dawn, is not a demon. He is not a wandering, disembodied ghost begging to inhabit a pig. And though he is technically an angel who fell, grouping him with the rebellious watchers of Mount Hermon is like comparing an emperor to a foot soldier. To understand his true nature, we must look at two of the most chilling, poetic, and profound passages in the entire Old Testament: Ezekiel chapter 28 and Isaiah chapter 14. These texts pull back the veil on the primeval court of heaven before the earth was even formed. They reveal that before the dawn of humanity, this entity was the absolute masterpiece of creation. Ezekiel calls him the anointed covering cherub. He wasn't just a messenger. He was the highest-ranking being in the celestial hierarchy, stationed directly at the throne of the Creator. He was adorned with every precious stone: ruby, topaz, emerald, and gold. The text says he walked among the fiery stones on the holy mountain of God. He was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. The watchers in Genesis fell because they looked down and lusted after human flesh. But Lucifer fell because he looked in the mirror and lusted after his own glory. His rebellion had nothing to do with the physical world. It was a rebellion of the mind, a silent, cancerous treason of the spirit. In Isaiah 14, the ancient prophet records the terrifying 5 I wills that echoed through the spiritual realm and fractured the cosmos. Lucifer declared in his heart, "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly. I will make myself like the Most High." He did not want to destroy creation. He wanted to steal it. He wanted to sit in the ultimate seat of authority. He wanted to be worshipped. And because his sin was born of absolute, unadulterated cosmic pride, committed in the very presence of God's unfiltered glory, his corruption was absolute, permanent, and incurable. He was cast out of the mountain of God, instantly transforming from the bearer of divine light into the ultimate architect of darkness. The ancient serpent, the adversary, the devil. This is the crucial distinction that changes everything you thought you knew about spiritual warfare. Demons are desperate, pathetic scavengers crawling in the dirt, looking for a biological body to inhabit just to feel something. The fallen angels of the Watcher class are bound in the deepest abyss in chains of darkness. The other rebellious principalities manipulate governments and earthly systems from the unseen realm. But the devil? He is the grand orchestrator. He is the master of the long game. He doesn't want to possess your body. He wants to possess your mind. He doesn't need to make you foam at the mouth. He just needs to gently deceive you into believing that God is a liar, that you are your own God, and that the truth is whatever you want it to be. He is brilliant. He is patient, and he is a master of disguise. The Apostle Paul warns us with a chilling statement in Corinthians. Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. So, we have the fallen angels, the demons, and the devil. Three entirely different entities with three different origins and three different agendas. But how did these ancient cosmic forces turn their attention to us? Why is humanity the ultimate prize in this invisible war? And more importantly, what exactly are they doing right now in the world you live in today? Why humanity? Why is this fragile, spinning rock the ultimate battleground for ancient cosmic forces? To answer this, we must look at the deepest, most agonizing wound in the devil's pride. When Lucifer was cast out of the mountain of God, he lost his position as the masterpiece of creation. But then, the Creator did something that absolutely shattered the spiritual hierarchy. He took dirt, simple, ordinary mud from the ground, and breathed his own eternal spirit into it. He created mankind, and worse yet, for the fallen ones, he created us in his own image. We bear the visual and spiritual fingerprint of the very God that the devil despises but cannot reach. Because the devil cannot strike the Creator directly, he obsesses over destroying the creation that looks like him. You are not just collateral damage in this cosmic war. You are the primary target. Every time the forces of darkness look at you, they see a reflection of the throne they were forever denied. This is why the three distinct layers of darkness we just uncovered, the rebellious principalities, the desperate demons, and the devil himself, work together in a terrifying, highly coordinated assault against your life today. They are not just fighting over earthly territory. They are fighting over your soul, your mind, and your body. Let's break down exactly how this invisible war plays out in your daily life right now. The highest tier, the fallen angels who became the principalities and powers of the air, do not care about your individual, daily habits. They operate on a massive, macro level. They are the unseen architects of the cultural decay, the political chaos, and the institutional collapse you watch on the news every evening. They manipulate laws, twist societal norms, and blind entire generations to the truth. When you look at the world and feel a deep, unsettling anxiety that everything you once knew is falling apart, that morality is being inverted, that is their design. They manufacture an atmosphere of global fear, division, and confusion to exhaust you. Then we have the devil, the master of the mind. He operates almost exclusively through deception. He doesn't need to physically manifest in your room to destroy your life. He simply whispers. He plants a tiny, imperceptible seed of doubt. He takes your past mistakes, your deepest regrets, the aging of your body, and the secret shames you've carried for decades, and he uses them to build a fortress of lies around your mind. He convinces you that you are too far gone, that God is disappointed in you, or that your prayers are just bouncing off the ceiling. His ultimate goal is to sever your faith through quiet, suffocating despair. And finally, at the very bottom, crawling through the wreckage of the culture and the mind, are the demons, the disembodied spirits of the ancient Nephilim. They exploit the cracks left open by the devil's lies. They feed on your physical and emotional vulnerabilities. They drive addictions, compulsions, irrational rages, and deep-seated physical afflictions. They want to degrade and humiliate the biological temple that God created to experience the physical world through your ruin. But here is the most shocking, hidden truth of all. A truth that the ancient texts make incredibly clear. Despite their ancient power, despite their cosmic origins and immense hatred for you, these entities are bound by a strict, unyielding spiritual jurisdiction. They are not all-powerful. They cannot simply take your mind or possess your life. They cannot cross the threshold of your soul unless you give them the legal right to do so, unless you open the door. And the terrifying reality is that millions of people, even believers, are opening these spiritual doors every single day without ever realizing it. What are these doors? How do we unknowingly invite the darkness in? When we think of opening doors to the dark spiritual realm, our minds almost always jump to the extreme. We picture Hollywood tropes, midnight seances in dark basements, Ouija boards, or bizarre ancient rituals. But the entities we have been discussing, the principalities, the devil, and the demons, are far too ancient and far too cunning to rely on such obvious theatrical traps for the average person. The true spiritual doors are terrifyingly ordinary. They are woven seamlessly into our daily routines, our deeply held emotions, and our modern culture. And the moment you recognize them, the invisible war you have been fighting your entire life will suddenly make absolute, chilling sense. The first and most destructive door is one the devil orchestrates personally: unforgiveness. In his letter to the Ephesians, the Apostle Paul issues a stark, urgent warning. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Look closely at that word, foothold. In the original Greek text, the word is topos, which literally means a geographic location, a legal territory, or a room. When you harbor deep bitterness, when you refuse to forgive the person who betrayed you, or when you hold on to a burning grudge for decades, you are not just hurting yourself psychologically. You are legally handing over a room in your spiritual house to the enemy. The devil does not need a grand, formal invitation. He only needs a crack in the door. Bitterness is the legal contract that allows his whispers to become your permanent reality. It breeds isolation, paranoid thoughts, and a heavy, suffocating anxiety that no medication can fully cure, because its root is not biological. It is a territorial occupation by a master of deceit. The second door is orchestrated by the highest tier, the principalities of the air, the casual normalization of the occult. We live in a culture heavily influenced by these fallen, high-ranking angels. It is a culture that actively rebrands ancient sorcery and spiritual rebellion as self-care, mindfulness, and enlightenment. Millions of people unknowingly invite the very entities God condemned by dabbling in practices that seem completely harmless. They check their horoscopes to guide their week, rely on tarot cards to ease their anxiety, or engage in energy practices that deliberately bypass the Creator to seek hidden power from the universe. The ancient scriptures are brutally clear on this matter. There is no such thing as neutral spiritual energy. If a supernatural pull or hidden knowledge is not coming directly from the Holy Spirit, it is coming from the other side. By seeking peace or power outside of God's boundaries, you are stepping completely out from under His umbrella of protection. You are walking into an ancient war zone blindfolded, sending out a massive spiritual beacon to the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, the demons, who are endlessly, desperately searching for an open biological vessel. The third door is perhaps the most tragic of all, because it is the one we pry open when we are already bleeding. It is the door of profound isolation, and it is exactly where the forces of darkness want you before they launch their final strike. The third door is perhaps the most tragic of all, because it is the one we pry open when we are already bleeding. It is the door of profound, deliberate isolation, and it is exactly where the forces of darkness want you before they launch their final strike. In the wild, a predator rarely attacks a strong, tightly knit herd. The lion waits in the tall grass. It watches for the one animal that wanders off, the one that is injured, or the one that arrogantly believes it is safer on its own. The devil operates on the exact same ancient, predatory principle. He knows that as long as you are connected to a community of true believers, people who can pray for you, see your blind spots, and speak the truth of God over your life, his lies will constantly be exposed by the light. So, he engineers your isolation. It doesn't happen overnight. It usually starts with a quiet, persistent whisper in your mind. No one understands what you're going through. If they really knew what you did, they would judge you. You don't need the church. It's full of hypocrites anyway. Just distance yourself. You can figure it out on your own. We live in the most hyper-connected era in human history. We have thousands of followers, friends, and digital connections on our glowing screens. Yet we are spiritually starving and profoundly alone. We project a meticulously curated image of perfection to the world, while silently bleeding to death in the privacy of our own bedrooms. This is a masterstroke of the principalities. They have designed a modern culture where you can be surrounded by people and yet remain completely, utterly isolated. When you isolate yourself, the devil's whispers become the only voice you hear in the echo chamber of your mind. His lies become your undeniable truth. And when the mind is broken down by prolonged isolation, depression and despair, the physical body becomes incredibly vulnerable to the oppression of the demonic layer. Those disembodied spirits of the ancient Nephilim that feed on human misery and degradation. We have now mapped the entire battlefield. You know who the fallen angels are. and why they are either bound in chains or ruling the air. You know the tragic, desperate origin of demons crawling upon the earth. You have seen the terrifying pride of the devil, and you now understand the ordinary, everyday doors, unforgiveness, the occult, and isolation that grant them legal access to your mind and your body. The invasion is not a metaphor. It is real. The chaos in your mind, the generational curses tearing your family apart, and that heavy, suffocating anxiety you feel in your chest in the middle of the night are not just natural occurrences. You are caught in the crossfire of an ancient war. So, what do? How do you fight an enemy you cannot punch, cannot shoot, and cannot even see? Millions of people try to fight this unseen spiritual war with purely physical weapons. They read self-help books. They try to manifest positive energy to the universe. They rely solely on therapy or medication to numb the spiritual pain. While medicine and therapy are profound blessings for the physical brain, you must understand a terrifying reality. You cannot medicate a demon. You cannot outthink the devil to drive the darkness out, to slam these spiritual doors permanently shut, and to take your life back from the enemy. You need something that no human being is born with. You need to understand a secret concept that the early Christians knew intimately, but the modern world has almost entirely forgotten. It is the ultimate weapon, and it is the only thing the darkness truly fears. What is the ultimate weapon against an ancient, invisible enemy? To find the answer, we must look at the original Greek language of the New Testament. The early Christians understood a profound distinction between two specific words that modern translations often mistakenly blend into one. Those two words are dunamis and exousia. Dunamis means raw, explosive power. It is where we get the modern word dynamite. The fallen angels, the principalities of the air, and the devil himself possess an immense, terrifying amount of dunamis. They have the raw power to manipulate weather, influence empires, and crush human psychology. If you try to fight them using your own human power, your intellect, your willpower, or your positive thinking, you will be absolutely obliterated. You are bringing a wooden stick to a cosmic nuclear war. But there is a second word, exousia. This word means something entirely different. It means absolute, delegated authority. Think of a traffic police officer standing in the middle of a massive intersection. A heavy speeding freight truck is barreling toward him. The officer does not have the raw physical power, dunamis, to stop a 10-ton truck with his bare hands. If it hits him, he dies. But when he raises his hand, the truck slams on the brakes and comes to a complete halt. Why? Because the officer carries the exousia, the legal authority of the entire government. Behind his raised hand is the weight of the law, the courts, and the military. This is the hidden truth that the devil is utterly terrified you will discover. He has raw power, but he has entirely lost his legal authority over humanity. 2,000 years ago, the Creator did not just come to earth to teach us how to be good people. The incarnation, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ was a massive, cosmic, legal transaction. The Apostle Paul explains this in his letter to the Colossians with breathtaking clarity. Having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. When the blood of the Creator was spilled, it paid the ultimate ransom. It legally nullified every contract, every curse, and every claim the devil had over the human race. The principalities were completely stripped of their exousia. When you belong to God, you do not need to be terrified of the dark. You do not need to scream at demons, perform complex rituals, or burn sage to clear the energy in your home. You simply have to exercise your delegated authority. When you speak the name of Jesus, you are not reciting a magic spell. You are enforcing a cosmic legal decree. You are the officer raising his hand, backed by the infinite authority of the throne of heaven. The desperate, disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, the demons, know exactly what this authority is. In the Gospels, whenever Jesus or his apostles approached, the demons didn't fight back. They shrieked in absolute terror. They recognized the exousia immediately, and they knew they had no choice but to obey and flee. They are squatters in an abandoned house, and when the true owner returns with the deed, the squatters must leave. But here is the catch. Authority only works if you actually believe you have it, and if you have the courage to use it. The devil cannot legally touch your soul, but he can deceive you into voluntarily surrendering your authority right back to him. He wants you to feel small. He wants you to feel unworthy. He wants you to look at your past mistakes and believe that God's authority could never flow through someone as broken as you. Because as long as you remain ignorant of your true identity, the darkness can continue to operate in your life completely unchallenged. So, how do we step into this authority? How do we permanently close the doors of unforgiveness, the occult, and isolation, and finally take back the territory the enemy has stolen from our families? The ancient texts leave us with a definitive, unmistakable blueprint for victory. The ancient texts leave us with a definitive, unmistakable blueprint for victory. But before you can use it, you must understand the first law of spiritual warfare. The enemy will fight the hardest just before he is evicted. When you decide to take your authority back, your mind will suddenly be flooded with reasons why it won't work. You will feel a sudden spike in anxiety, a rush of past guilt, or an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Do not retreat. That is not your mind failing. That is the sound of the darkness panicking. The first step in this ancient blueprint is the absolute revocation of legal rights. You cannot evict a spiritual squatter if you're still holding on to the lease. This means you must speak out loud. Why out loud? Because while the Creator knows your silent thoughts, the spiritual realm operates on the spoken word. The entire universe was spoken into existence. You must verbally, audibly forgive the person who destroyed your trust. You do not forgive them because they deserve it. You forgive them because your soul can no longer afford the agonizing rent the devil is charging for that bitterness. You say, I release them and I take back the ground I gave to the enemy. The moment those words leave your lips under the authority of Christ, The door of unforgiveness slams shut and the legal contract is burned to ashes. The second step is the severing of the occult. This is not a passive process. In the Book of Acts, when the early believers realized the true, terrifying reality of the spiritual realm, they didn't just put their spell books and amulets in a drawer. They brought them into the public square and burned them. You must physically and spiritually cleanse your space. Throw away the crystals, delete the horoscope apps, and renounce the abstract universe energy you blindly invited in. You declare out loud that you belong exclusively to the Creator, and you permanently close the door to the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. You cut off their landing strip. The third step is the most terrifying to human pride, yet the most liberating for the human soul. You must break the isolation. The Apostle James wrote a profound, piercing instruction. Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Notice the exact phrasing. He didn't say confess to be forgiven. The cross already secured your forgiveness. He said confess to be healed. When you take the dark, shameful secret you have been hiding for years, the addiction you cannot shake, or the intrusive thoughts that terrify you, and you speak them into the light in the presence of a trusted, faithful believer, the devil's power over it evaporates instantly. Darkness cannot survive exposure. The lies only work in the echo chamber of your isolation. The moment you bring it into the light, you destroy the illusion that you are alone. When you revoke the legal rights of bitterness, cleanse your territory of the occult, and step into the light of a praying community, a massive shift occurs in the unseen realm. You are no longer a bleeding victim in a cosmic war. You step into your true identity, becoming a terrifying, immovable force to the kingdom of darkness. But there is one final piece to this ancient mystery. A final revelation about what happens to you and to the forces arrayed against you the moment you truly take your stand. It is a promise so powerful, so absolute, that it has echoed through eternity, waiting for you to finally hear it. The final piece to this ancient mystery is a promise that completely flips the cosmic hierarchy upside down. It is the ultimate insult to the devil's pride and the absolute vindication of humanity. Throughout this journey, we have looked at the terrifying majesty of the fallen angels, the desperate starvation of the demons, and the blinding arrogance of the devil. For thousands of years, these entities have looked down on humanity as fragile, mortal creatures made of mere dirt. They have terrorized us, manipulated our cultures, and tried to destroy our minds because they believed they were inherently, cosmically superior to biological life. But the Apostle Paul, writing to the early church in Corinth, drops a revelation so staggering that most modern believers read right past it without ever grasping its massive implications. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 3, he asks a simple, earth-shattering question. Do you not know that we will judge angels? Let that sink in for a moment. The ancient rebellious watchers who descended on Mount Hermon, the cosmic principalities who currently rule the air, and manipulate world governments. And Lucifer himself, the anointed, covering cherub who once walked among the fiery stones of God. Their ultimate, eternal judgment will not just be handed down by the Creator alone. God has decreed that redeemed humanity, the very creatures made of the dirt they so deeply despised, will sit in judgment over them. The ones they tormented will become their judges. The victims will become the victors. This is the breathtaking poetry of God's justice. The devil's ultimate defeat is not just that he loses the war. It is that he will be judged by the exact beings he tried to destroy. This is who you really are. You are not a helpless victim floating through a cold, chaotic universe. You are not defined by the trauma you have endured, the addictions you have battled, or the lies the enemy has whispered into your mind in the darkest hours of the night. You are an image bearer of the Most High, armed with the exousia, the absolute, delegated authority of the risen Christ. The invisible war is real, but the ultimate victory has already been secured. The only thing left for you to do is to step into the light, close the doors to the darkness, and take your rightful place on the battlefield. If this message resonated with your spirit today, if it opened your eyes to the invisible reality happening all around you, do not let this be where your journey ends. The darkness thrives on keeping these ancient truths hidden. And the most powerful thing you can do right now is share this light. Send this video to someone you know who is secretly battling anxiety, depression, or spiritual isolation. Let them know they are not crazy and they are not fighting alone. Hit the subscribe button to join this community of truth seekers, because we are going to continue exposing the hidden realities of Scripture that the modern world has forgotten. And before you go, I want you to make a public declaration today. Go down into the comments right now and type, "I'm taking my authority back." Let it be a digital line drawn in the sand. Let it be the first step in closing the door to the enemy. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay in the light, and remember exactly who you were created to be. Bye.